So this is O'Brien versus the United States court case by Shep Earl and Grady Cole. You just get slide.
There we go. Alright, in 1966, the U.S. was in the heat of the battle in Vietnam. And this is when O'Brien burned his draft card in front of the Boston courthouse. And then President Lyndon B. Johnson started the U.S. Draft back up because of Vietnam and like how many people like they wanted to go over there to help fight the communists. And then in 1965, he signed a bill that said it was illegal to burn draft cards because it said that the draft cards were government property. And in 1968, the Supreme Court made a law that said it was like burning draft cards was against the law and it was not considered free speech. Just that video.
Oh, the video? What is this video gonna do?
It gives you like a lot of facts about the Vietnam War compared to World War II, and like shows how much like different the two wars was, and like how much each man, how many hours he fought.
In Huntington, West Virginia.
So basically that just compared how much worse for the Americans Vietnam was compared to World War II.
So what civil liberties and amendments were broken? The main amendment that was broken was your First Amendment, your right to free speech and political expression, because they viewed him burning the draft cards as a form of political expression and showing that the draft was wrong. But you could argue that political expression should be reserved for the right of the president and not for the people. It really depends on how you view it, but a lot of people who were protesting believed that he had the First Amendment right to burn the draft cards instead of being restricted and having to go serve when he shouldn't have to. And like I said, the other point was a lot of other people believed that it wasn't his First Amendment right and not every thought should be considered as free speech. And that was the main amendment that was being broken.
So were the rights of individuals or the society protected? We think that the individual rights were broken for the rights of the whole society. because the president and the government was more focused on making sure that communism didn't spread as much because that was a real threat back then, and so they kind of pushed aside the thoughts of like other citizens who didn't want like their like boyfriends, husbands, sons, and dads to like go into war and like possibly die or get really wounded. And also it was to help keep like allies in Vietnam.
The next question was the U.S. government successful and were they justified? And there's two main points. The first main point was were they successful in stopping the protests and the people burning draft cards, and that they were, because the Supreme Court ruled that it was in fact illegal to burn draft cards, and so they were successful in stopping the protests. But their second point was the Vietnam War, and that was the whole reason they had the draft in the first place, which they ultimately failed to win, and they lost a lot of soldiers in the process, so you could say that they really weren't successful. And were they justified in their actions? It depends, like we said before, if you believe that the First Amendment was broken. If it was broken, then they shouldn't have been justified because it was illegal for them to take away the O'Brien's rights to burn draft cards and his form of political expressions. But if you agree, like the Supreme Court, that it was illegal, then they're completely justified because they were just enforcing the law and keeping people from breaking it and keeping people safe. And the final question is, what impacts did it have on the citizens? And like everything else before, there's really two sides to it. So some negative impacts on people who were protesting it is they really felt hurt by their government because the government was going against them, and they felt like their rights were being taken away and got really offended by it. And so this really hurt those people's views of the government and their relationship with the government. But on the other hand, you have the people who felt really backed and supported by the government and felt strengthened and felt like their government was doing the right thing. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody? Questions?
DJ?
So are draft cards like a representation that like saying that you're supposed to like go to the military or?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
basically.
Why? So
just
why was
was-
there a need for a draft?
The draft is basically there was one in the Korean War, Vietnam, World War II, and World War I, and it's basically to just make sure that enough soldiers are going over, so that like the people that we already have over there aren't just being like overwhelmed and not having any breaks or moves.
Right.
Not
but
having
but
enough troops.
specifically for Vietnam though, what was in? You guys had facts to support this, but so why was there a need to go from an all-volunteer army to drafting people?
Well, just like because 2/3 of the people were volunteered, and I mean that's like still a lot, but there was an extra 1/3 that had to come in just to
I
help.
don't know why. Why?
They had to fight communism because it was a big threat and they needed more people over there.
Why?
Why did they have to fight communism?
No. Why? Why was there a need for more people? What was that other statistic that stuck out to some of you in this room? Probably.
Oh, that like how much more time?
Well, maybe.
Death. Like,
Death or casualty, right?
Oh, yeah,
One
like
out of every
one in
10.
every 10 people
Right?
died.
And so the more people that are out, remember casualty doesn't mean death, it means you're probably wounded in some capacity, right? And I wonder if that statistic even takes into account mental trauma. It probably doesn't. It probably means like a physical casualty, right? But as this war continued to wage on and start to lose popularity within the United States, then all of a sudden you had people who you had a dilemma. You had people that have been serving over there for too long, right? You need to give them some sort of relief, but you don't have enough people who volunteered willingly, so therefore they institute the conscription draft, right? And it's people like O'Brien who had sat there and watched the media, watched his friends come home, either not come home physically, right, or dead bodies coming home, or come home completely mangled and messed up, physically or emotionally. he didn't want to go, and he spoke. He was a voice for other people, right? And he said, "I'm not going."
Yeah.
Right. Of course, he brought that case. That case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, who said it was illegal, but it held a big weight for how other people felt about things.
Tommy?
You stated the two opinions about how people might feel if the government was justified. What do you think? Do you think the government was justified in ruling that illegal?
I personally don't. I think that he had the right to burn the draft cards. I don't think he had the right to not go to the draft, but I think he had the right to burn the cards and show in protest. So I don't think they were necessarily justified in arresting him and making it illegal. Max?
And so, like, if you burn your draft cards, is there anything else saying that you have to be drafted and go into the military?
No.
Besides the draft card? So then, like, if you burn the draft card, then
You can
but
escape the
you're
draft.
you're saying that they should still have to go, but they should be allowed to burn the draft card. But if they burn the draft card, then how will they?
No, there's still a
people- Yeah.
database. It's like when
Yeah,
you guys
there's
are
still-
18, or when you're 18, I guess. But when you first get your license, your name gets put into a system to pull from potential jurors. So when you had jury summons, well, yeah, you could burn it up. You're like, I can't take time off from work. You're still in the system. They'll contact you. So it was the same thing. But I think the draft card burning was more symbolic than anything. So it's not like they hand wrote one card and that's it.
Okay.
Right? But for him, it was like, this is a piece of paper and I'm not following these orders.
He wasn't doing it to get out of the draft, he was doing it to protest the draft. Nate?
So what happened to O'Brien? Like, did he go to Vietnam?
I think he ultimately didn't go because he got arrested. He went to jail for burning the draft cards.
Well,
Okay.
did more people start burning the draft cards because they would rather go to jail than to war?
Yeah, there was like after he did, there's like a spark of a rebellion starting to happen, and so like there would be like public burnings, and like a bunch of people would come and just like light them on fire and watch them burn, I guess.
Thank you guys. Alright, we got one.